Hi everyone. So I'm back again. I am doing a book review because I want to do book reviews. I think they're good for me to reflect on what I've learned for the books. So the book that I read today, I read a little bit yesterday, but I didn't read the full rest of it. It's called Make It Stick. It's a book about learning and how to learn in a more efficient way. And it toppled some of my predispositions about learning that I thought were right, but I guess I'd never learned via data how to learn in the correct way. So the biggest myth in the book that was debunked per se via a bunch of scientific papers by psychologists. If you practice something over and over and over again, it doesn't increase your knowledge or ability in whatever you're trying to do. It was one of the first articles in there. It's about kids throwing beanbags into buckets. So they have two groups of kids, and the first group has two buckets, one at 2 yards away and one at 4 yards away, and they have to toss the beanbags into each of the buckets. And the second group of students, they have one bucket at 3 yards away, and the goal of this is just to get as many beanbags that you can tossed into each of the respective buckets. And the first day, where students are not, they're in the two groups. The group that has two buckets and they have to toss them into both do much worse than the students who just have to toss it into one bucket. And the next day, they come back, and they both groups now have to throw beanbags into a bucket that's 3 yards away. And the students that did the best are the ones that had the two buckets rather than the one bucket. And I found that surprising, but they go on to explain if you just practice one thing, you're less versatile in what you're practicing. So it's not going to have nearly as much of an impact on your overall skill than practicing multiple different aspects. So if you play baseball, one of the analogies I would say would be if you're practicing, you're just using fastballs and then just doing curveballs and then just doing changeups, rather than interspertantly changing between whatever pitches that are coming at you. You'll become better in practice because you'll know, oh, it's a fastball, so I'm going to be better at hitting fastballs. But in a game where there's pitches thrown no such order, then you're not going to do well in the game. While the people who do practice the, curveball, fastball, changeup situation without care to the order that they're in are going to do much better. That was a preconception I had. So, if I'm going to study only the PowerPoint, it's not a good thing to do for a chemistry course. You should study that, you should study the notes, and you should study them in different fashions. So if I was going to study a language, it would be you'd study the writing, and then you'd study the readings, and then you would write it, and then you would speak it. You wouldn't do just one of those things, because then you'd only be good at the one thing. And apparently retention's really bad at that one thing too. So they went on to say that most of it, 50%, is lost within a week, and then a little bit more is lost as you proceed through the learnings. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to be revising my study habits based off of this. Additionally, if you quiz yourself, you're doing yourself a huge favor in the long run. Don't just be like, oh yeah, turn over the flashcard and then be like, oh yeah, that's what it was, because it's a bad way to trick yourself. It's like an illusion that you know something when you don't know it. So whenever you're supposed to solve a problem or try to solve a problem, like in a class or something like that, you should always try to solve it yourself, and then you should then look at the answer or have it explained to you in a corrective manner. The corrective manner is the better way to do it, but oftentimes you don't have that. So just look at the answer after you at least attempt it once, and you're more likely to remember what was discussed. That's why they go into this huge section on college campuses and high school campuses and elementary schools. They do every single level, and it works at every single level, where if you give small quizzes throughout the day or even throughout the course, you're going to have a lot better knowledge retention. And that's the goal of a class anyway, is to learn. So learn by quizzing yourself. So Quizlet would be an awesome resource. But you could also do, you could also just make flashcards yourself, or do the reviews at the end of the quiz, or make yourself a cheat sheet and see what you got wrong on that cheat sheet. Speaking of which, reflection is also something that I learned in this book. You should reflect on what you learned for the day, otherwise you'll lose it. Not much to be said about that one. Then stand corrected a little bit. So you should reflect after whatever you learned, and then you should reflect near bedtime, and then you should reflect once in the morning. And then by that time you've had sleep to consolidate what you learned. You're way more likely to remember whatever it is than you would have been otherwise. Calibration. Knowing that you're stupid. Everyone's stupid. I'm stupid. This is my second time recording this because I didn't do it the first time because the mic wasn't on, but I didn't think to check it. So, yeah. The calibration is knowing that you're incompetent at something. Don't think that you are awesome at something. It's an illusion. Once had a friend who thought he was really good at music, really good at it. He'd make a lot of music, but it wasn't that good. And I never had the heart to tell him that it wasn't good music, but he thought he was the greatest, and he just wasn't. So you got to be careful, because you can fall into those traps pretty readily. Understand where you need improvement. Introspection is key when you are learning something. You will know where you're going to go. Know what you can work on. Know what you can understand a bit better. And you're going to be better because of it. And then the book kind of wraps up with different studying habits and techniques that you can use in your daily life, and they go over practical uses for it. They go over using it in university as a teacher, using this as a student, using this as a lifelong learner. They give pretty good examples of where and when to use these skills and how they're applicable in everyday life. And I thought that was useful, and it drew upon the knowledge that was given near the beginning of the book. So the beginning of the book was good for teaching you, and then through teaching you how to use it at the end of the book. So it progressed pretty well, I should say. Let's see. Spacing out practice. I forgot to mention this, but I should mention it now. When you're practicing something, don't do it all at once. It's like cramming for a final. You're not going to do well if you cram for it. You got to space out your practice. And they even give an example of medical school stuff. So, hey, if I'm going to medical school and I'm a surgeon and I have to learn how to do the suture, there's two ways you can go about it. You could just do all four of said sutures immediately, or you could wait and do them one week, one another week, and otherwise. It doesn't even have to be fast. The people who did it the latter way, they did much better, and they have a better performance and understanding of how to put in the suture. And I thought that was really cool, how spacing out practice will really help you internalize something in the long run. Let's see. Other than that, I don't have anything else. I thought the book was pretty good. Would recommend it. Let me see. It is called, once again, Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. And it is by Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, Mark A. Mcdaniel. And that's it. But really, it does question your predispositions about learning and how to learn quicker, and how certain people are able to memorize crazy lengths of anything, like a deck of cards in like a minute, hand it back and tell you the order of the cards. It's pretty incredible. I would recommend it. If I was going to rate it out of 10 stars, probably an 8. So, yeah, that is Connor's book review of the week. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next week for another book.